You know the saying, love makes people do crazy things. Or is it motorcycles? Well, I guess it depends on who you ask. And if you ask Arthur Coldwells and Teejay Adams, they'd probably say love and motorcycles go hand in hand, especially considering that their friendship and subsequent relationship started in the British bike scene in the middle of the 70s. Although life sent them in different directions and different continents for about 40 years, they reconnected a few years ago and rekindled their relationship. Since then, they've never looked in the rearview mirror, with their love of motorcycles as strong as ever. In fact, they love motorcycling so much, they make their living on them. Arthur and TJ run Ultimate Motorcycling, a magazine turned website reviewing the latest and greatest in bikes and gear, as well as traveling the country, catching races and rallies, making new friends everywhere they go. They also co-host the Motos and Friends podcast, where they cover industry news, racing, reviews, and they even interview interesting folks from all over the motorcycling world. Like, for example, Kenny Roberts, Nick Ionach, Richard Warsham, Matt Oxley, and yours truly. This is Teejay Adams and Arthur Coldwells. I'm your host, Mark Long, and you're listening to Driven to Ride. All right, Teejay Adams and Arthur Coldwells, you guys are on Driven to Ride. Thanks for being here.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, you guys have been in the motorcycle industry for a long time, but I'll let you say it in your own words. What are you guys known for? What's maybe your claim to fame in your own words?
Well, that's varied over my lifespan, because originally, I guess from career point of view, I used to model. I used to be a girly model, topless calendars, all that sort of thing, which is not at all PC these days, but I don't care. That's how I made a good living, and had heaps of fun and met a lot of very interesting people, had great times. But in more recent years, I'm famous for being Mrs. Arthur Coldwells.
Yes, no, she's being too generous, but yeah, I wouldn't say I have a claim to fame because I am not famous, but essentially, you know, I've loved motorcycles all my life, and ultimately, kind of fell into working in the industry. So I've been incredibly fortunate. I consider myself very lucky. So, you know, here I am.
Yeah. So you work in the industry. What do you do in the motorcycle industry?
Well, I am the founder and president of Ultimate Motorcycling magazine. I can, it's a story which I can tell you in a moment how we got going. But yeah, that's basically, you know, what we do. And we started our podcast, Motos and Friends, about 3 years ago, and TJ is a co-host and producer on that as well as being an associate editor on the magazine.
Yeah, so I've joined the team. I do reviews, ride bikes, wear a variety of clothing, and test them to their extreme.
And she also does a lot of our social media, so if it's not good, blame her for that.
Fair enough. So a little bit more than just being Mrs. Arthur Coldwells. You sound like you're holding your own.
Exactly.
That's the most important part for me.
Fair enough. So, well, let's start at the beginning. How did you guys get into motorcycling?
Well, for me, it was when I was at school. I was introduced by some other girly friends to a bunch of motorcycle guys. I think I was about 16 or 17 at the time. And it was completely banned by my parents. And so I used to put on as many clothing items that I owned as possible and meet Clive, who was kind of became my boyfriend and was my rider. And I would pillion ride with him all over the place, unbeknownst to my parents. And I just loved it. We were on 70s Japanese motorcycles, and they were just chrome and colourful and gorgeous. And I was completely swept up by that whole rugged, manly thing. Yeah, and that was my introduction. And from there, I moved on to riding myself.
Yeah, I went to English boys boarding school. So okay. I was a completely, you know, captive market, you know, up until I was almost 19. And in England in those days, obviously you can tell that we're both from England. So in England in those days, you got your driver's license at 17. But at boarding school, we weren't allowed to own cars. And I'd been reading motorcycle news and subscribing to it for a couple of years and was just completely caught up in the whole racing and motorcycle thing. And so I got a motorcycle at school. which I wasn't supposed to ride. It was supposed to be a club. But me and my friend were the only two members. We each had a bike, and of course we used to sneak out of the school and ride the bikes. And that was really how it all started.
2 members to the club.
Yeah. So that was it.
We should really let people who are listening know that we actually originated from London. We do still have the accents, but we lived about 20 minutes from each other in London.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And so I was part of the same motorcycle group that with my friends and that TJ sort of joined fairly soon.
Yeah, so I was kind of, I don't know how long I was into riding on the back, and Clive introduced me to his good friend Arthur, and we immediately, I don't know, imprinted, I don't know what the word is, connected, love at first sight. It was just instant.
Wow.
So it threw a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons for me, kind of emotionally. And Arthur had just had a horrendous accident.
Yeah. Clive is still one of our best friends, incidentally. He's a lovely
really?
guy. Yeah, lovely guy. Goes to the TT every year, and we're still good friends with him. In fact, we're hoping to meet him there next year. So, but anyway, yeah, that was our early years of motorcycling, and motorcycles in those days, this was sort of the late 70s, were really our sole form of transport. All of us, my friends and us, that's all we did. We just rode motorcycles. We commuted on them. I was what they call a dispatch rider for a while in London, sort of delivering packages. They're now done mainly by bicycle guys, I think. But in those days, it was motorcycles.
Oh, yeah.
So, we both just loved it. We spent a lot of time touring around Europe and all kinds of things.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. I was going to say, in as much as motorcycle was the only form of transport, for me, I took my car test and failed that. I think it was the 3rd time.
Oh, jeez.
But then in England, you could just buy any motorcycle up to 250cc and ride it just on your provisional license. And so that's what I did. I bought a GT185, a Suzuki, and Clive taught me how to ride. And yeah, I used to commute into central London. That was it. And every evening we'd go out on our bikes.
Yeah. That had to have been a magical time in London in the late 70s with the universal Japanese motorcycles kind of springing up everywhere. And not to mention that, but being able to cross the channel and tour Europe, like you said.
Yes. I mean, my kind of next stage in life was I ended up single, and I went off to Europe, down to France on my own on my brand new Z400 Kawasaki to find myself. The way it went was I went to leave on, by then I had a TS 185, not much bigger, was it 175? Anyways, I went to leave, and Clive, even though we weren't together, was like, you can't go in this. I was like, but it does 70 on the motorway. So he said, no, you can't just burn along at 70 the whole time. You'll blow it up. You have to get something bigger. So I went to Ruislip and bought a Z400J. I went, right, I'm ready to go. And he was like, no, you have to run it in first and get the first service. Dang. So did that. And I went off to France on my own for a good few weeks, went down to the south of France and just hung out there, had various camping experiences that I could tell many tales, but I don't want to bore everybody with that. And then when I came back, things had moved around, shapes had shifted, and Arthur and I could be together.
Yeah.
Okay.
And at that time, back in those days, I went through a variety of motorcycles, but really ended up favoring, the GT 750, aka the Water Buffalo or the Kettle. Just a fabulous bike, and I've really been sort of loyal to Suzuki ever since. I progressed through a Kawasaki Z900, over here the KZ900, which was, in those days was sort of the king of the road. That was the real monster bike. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, before I came to America, I progressed through, and I had one of the very first GSXR 1100s in England. So wow. I came to America in '89, and I'd had my Gixxer 1100 for a couple of years. And I remember riding around on that thing thinking, this is the perfect motorcycle. I mean, how on earth are they ever going to do any better than this? And of course, here we are, a while later, and things definitely have progressed. But
you're right. In London, or back in England in those days, in the 70s, it was just a ride fest for us. We had a great time. We lived life. It was full throttle. We'd come home on a Friday night after work, and Arthur and I would get on the bike and just ride down to the coast as fast as possible to get the last ferry, go across to Europe and just ride down to the sunshine. That's what it was all about, because living in England is
wet
grey.
and cold.
Right. It's not exactly the best motorcycle riding.
Exactly. It's all about searching out the sunshine. But we used to go to the Le Mans, the Le Mans 24-hour races every year.
Yeah.
And that was fantastic, just camping there. And it seems we haven't been to the French, MotoGP races recently, but it sounds like it hasn't changed at all.
Really?
The French are just as crazy as they ever were. All the crazy camping. So that's quite interesting, but it was great times. And of course, another thing that really bonded us at the time were the so-called transatlantic trophy races. I don't know if you've heard of those.
No.
These were races that back in those days, what is now MotoGP, the Grand Prix races, it was a sort of a team sport. It was USA versus, the UK. And they would have 3 races or 6 races at 3 different racetracks over the Easter weekend. So Good Friday, Easter Sunday, and Easter Monday. So 6 races, and they would, accrue their points, and whichever, whether the USA would beat the UK. But this was back in the golden years of Barry Sheene and Kenny Roberts and those guys. Ultimately, Freddie Spencer. I mean, it was absolutely astonishing. So we'd take ourselves off to Brands Hatch, every Good Friday, and we'd sit there and watch these guys. It was amazing to watch.
We had you don't realize it at the time how wonderful life is, but it was great. We bought our own house, which was ahead of kind of friends and colleagues, and had a dog and all that sort of thing. But we still used to just get on the bike, put a tent on the back, with the kettle hanging off, because, we have to have tea being English. Kettle hanging off the back, and we would just go off. And we got to Le Mans one time, and we found this great camping spot on a hill with a great view in the middle of a huge field, and we kind of meandered around and got into bed. We woke up the next morning.
There was all this noise going off in the night. We're like, what on earth is going on out there? We got up in the morning.
And the field was completely full. There were guy ropes everywhere. You were tripping over things.
Oh,
geez. It was absolutely packed. It was absolutely packed.
Yeah.
We couldn't believe it. I mean, if there had been a fire, there is no way you could get out of there. I mean, every tent would have gone up in like 10
just
seconds.
packed to the gills. Yeah.
Packed to the gills.
Man.
Yeah.
And another time we went to Brands Hatch just to see, Barry Sheene was practicing, which was really important to us. So we went off there on our own. It was a bit frosty, wasn't it?
Yeah. We woke up in the morning, there was like 6 inches of snow outside.
Yeah, we had I bought this fandangled, the salesman told me it would keep us really warm, silver-lined sleeping bag.
Oh, sure.
So, we put the little tent up, which didn't even have an attached fly sheet. Everything was drafty. And we got in there, and Arthur's like, where's the sleeping bag? And there's this skinny thing. It's like, this is going to be fantastic.
How we didn't die of hypothermia, I will never know.
It was so cold, we had to lie on top of each other for 20 minutes at a time.
Just to get some sleep. It was an adventure.
Yeah. And as you say, we unzipped in the morning, and there was snow everywhere.
Oh, wow.
The day went on.
Yeah.
Yeah, the transatlantic trophies were like the Ryder Cup of golf for motorcycling, and like I say, we're huge Sheene fans. And then,
and then all of a sudden,
young dude came from America.
All of a sudden, this slow-talking kid from Louisiana. I think he must have been 18 years old. I think you had to be 18 in those days, but he was very young. He just about crossed a birthday, so he was eligible on this plain silver, unadorned motorcycle tuned by a Japanese guy called Irv Kanimoto. And they just had a van, and they wheeled the bike out of the van, and Freddie absolutely lit the place up. It was amazing.
Really?
And I say to him even today, I say, we all went to the circuit wanting to be Barry Sheene. We all came away wanting to be Freddie Spencer.
Wow.
That's true, yeah. I even named my dog after him.
It sounds like you guys were in the golden age of motorcycle racing, too. You got to experience that kind of up close and personal.
They were literally operating out of vans, as Arthur says, and you could wander around the pits. You could chat with them, have a cup of tea with them. They were just there in their little vans. Super.
They were just so accessible. It's funny. I mean, MotoGP today is great. I mean, we love going to Kota each year and seeing everyone and the riders are still great. I mean, it's all good. But in those days, everything was really disarmingly, accessible. It was really quite shocking.
Yeah. Just run onto the track.
Just walk around the back of a van and there'd be Barry Sheen standing there, having a cigarette.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about ultimate motorcycling a little bit, because obviously you're still passionate about the industry, passionate about riding motorcycles, so much so that you started ultimate motorcycling. How did that come about?
Well, I'll just say I hadn't realized, because we split up. We had an intense relationship and then an intense breakup.
Okay.
And so I didn't realize Arthur had moved to America and I moved to Australia. And I had another life and 3 boys. And then was single for almost 6 years or something. And there was a bit of a kerfuffle on Facebook because a good friend of ours was in trouble and people were saying, do you know so-and-so? And eventually I saw Arthur had put a comment on somebody else's comment. It's a bit long-winded. And I went, well, the Coldwells. So I messaged him thinking, at this time of life, there's nothing to lose. I've got to let him know how I still feel. So we arranged to chat on Facebook Messenger. And I said to him, Arthur, I don't know what your situation is now, but I've always loved you and I still do.
Wow, you went for it.
A bit of silence.
And that was it, yeah. That was 2019.
Yes.
Oh, wow, okay.
So, but anyway, to answer your question.
Well, I was going to say my next question to you was, I don't suppose you're still interested in motorcycling.
I was like, well, yeah, you could say that. It's essentially, I came to California in 1989.
Okay.
And in 1994, I started working for a publishing company out of Malibu. Mm-hmm. In 2001, they acquired a luxury lifestyle magazine known as the Rob Report.
Yeah.
Which is, sort of deals with, all the, the millionaire lifestyle.
Right.
Nowadays, the billionaire lifestyle, private yachts and jets and all kinds of things. Anyway, so the company acquired that magazine and the strategy was to launch or acquire other verticals underneath that. So, Rob Report cars, Rob Report watches, Rob Report whatever. Mm-hmm. And I said to the CEO, I said, and of course, this was 2002 when all the baby boomers were out there, buying, all the dentists and doctors were all out there buying Harleys.
Right.
And I said, I think there's a big, sector of the market that hasn't been addressed. And I think there's room for a luxury lifestyle magazine. He said, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So off we went. So Rob Report Motorcycling was born, and it was, it was great. It was very successful for the first few years. Of course, then the Great Recession came along in 2007, 2008. Right. At which point I was kind of over the Rob Report thing, and so I ended up buying the magazine off Bill Curtis and Kurt Co. and renamed it Ultimate. And 15 years later, here we are. So in 2016, we stopped printing. Printing just became completely unsustainable.
Sure.
But by then, we'd really transitioned to big-time digital. So we are a website, ultimatemotorcycling.com, a magazine app, a podcast, and a newsletter.
Yeah.
And so here we are, still scraping together a living.
Yeah. Well, the team is superb. I have to say, I've kind of, what's the word, juiced my way in. I'm actually an artist. I'm a watercolor artist, and I've ended up as part of the ultimate motorcycling team. And the guys and girls just do a sterling job, I have to say, to produce original daily content. It blows my mind how much work they do. It's not, a 9-to-5 job by any means.
No. In terms of ownership and starting it, it's been absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's absolutely the most appalling financial decision you can make. Just absolutely terrible.
Well, you're in the motorcycle industry, so, I mean, right, it's about par for the course.
So there's about 3 people in the motorcycle industry that make money. I'm not sure who they are, but I'm sure they exist somewhere.
We'll find them one day.
But certainly I'm not one of them. Yeah. Yeah. But as an enthusiast, my goodness, I've lived the life. And in the last, 20 years, I've ridden, the best motorcycles on the best tracks everywhere. I absolutely had the dream job.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you look at the website, I mean, you review a lot of motorcycles. Like TJ said, you review gear. I mean, what's it like to be able to ride and review like like you said, the best motorcycles in the world, or just kind of any motorcycle you want?
Well, it's a privilege.
It is a privilege, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's been absolutely fantastic for me. I mean, I've had some amazing experiences. I think probably the highlight, if you were to ask me that, was I was one of a handful of people that got invited to Valencia a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to ride the Honda RC 213VS.
Oh, wow.
Which was the MotoGP derived, sport bike. It was essentially a road-going, street-going, hand-built to order MotoGP motorcycle that was street legal.
Mm-hmm.
So in the morning, there were only like two of them in existence. They rented out Valencia, the MotoGP track.
Yeah.
They would only allow one of us out on the track at a time. So we were literally circulating on our own.
Right.
And so we're going round and round and doing that. In the afternoon, they then gave us the detuned, the uncorked version.
Oh, really?
Which I think was about, give or take, about 220 horsepower and all. It was absolutely spectacular. What an unbelievable motorcycle. It literally changed my opinion, or changed the way I think motorcycles work. I couldn't believe how well it worked. It felt like there was nothing underneath me. And I couldn't believe how intuitive it was to ride. And I remember going round and thinking, this was, of course, in Marc Marquez's, heyday. And I'm thinking, no wonder he's as good riding this thing, because it literally feels like anything is possible on this. I'm thinking, I'm not the world's most adventurous rider, but I'm riding around thinking, well, if anything goes wrong, I'll just save it. So,
wow.
Which of course I couldn't, but
yeah,
but yeah, I was thinking, no wonder he rides his bike the way he does.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool.
So I've ridden Phillip Island, Sepang with Johnny Ray. I mean, you name it, absolutely spectacular.
Yeah.
Had some great, very memorable times.
TJ, do you get to ride a lot of and review a lot of motorcycles too?
Yes, that's why I say it's a privilege, because on a personal from a personal point of view, it's just awesome to be able to try so many different motorcycles,
mm-hmm.
And they're just top spec put there in front of me with everything prepared to try out. But it's also a privilege because people are reading my opinion on something, and I like to feel that I'm being as helpful as possible. And we have this spectrum range across ultimate motorcycling, and although I've been riding for many years, I would call myself an anxious rider. I'm always a bit backwards. Arthur's very forwards.
Sure.
It's like the hare and the tortoise. And so, I'm able to give an opinion from more of what I would call a newbie point of view.
Okay.
So what I see are different aspects to a motorcycle. I'm more interested in whether I can hold it upright, what the weight's like, whether I can get my feet on the ground.
Sure.
Whereas Arthur's all about the handling and the speed. We do cover all of that, but from different points of view. But it is an amazing lifestyle. As Arthur says, you don't make a bean, but it sure is fun.
Yeah, no, and being able to have those kind of two differing opinions, I think probably is part of what makes ultimate motorcycling so successful. So
yeah, well, we have several. We do have quite a few on the team, and Don Williams, our editor, coordinates the whole thing, so he gets the right type of rider out for the right type of motorcycle. We have, off-road riders, Jess McKinley and Will Embry, and we have Nick DeSena, who's the senior editor, who now does most of the track riding and those sports bikes, that type of thing that Arthur used to cover more in person, but he's busy traveling with his wife as well now and creating podcasts. But yeah, Nick DeSena's the guy now, and he does our YouTube videos, etc.
Okay, cool.
So we do have a big team that we call upon.
Do you guys ever get starstruck when you interview people or go to these events and see these stars?
Yes, yeah. I'm constantly starstruck. People and their skills and people and their life stories. Yeah, lots of the time. I mean, a big one for me was meeting Freddie Spencer. He's now a good friend of ours.
Cool.
Dear friends Joe Lacroix and Sumi introduced us to him, and we went to the bike shed in Los Angeles and had a meal with him there, and he was just fantastic. So he and his wife Alexandra have taken us to the Build Train Race program, and we've learned a lot about that. That's a Royal Enfield program for ladies, so that's really
cool.
Trailblazing introductory racing class for ladies on the Royal Enfields.
Yeah. I mean, for me, do I get starstruck? Yes, absolutely. But they're typically the racers, and I'm starstruck. Not necessarily by them; they're always super nice guys, but just by the sheer skill that they have, the level of skill and the level of talent is astonishing. It's. I think the man in the street just has no clue how gifted these guys really are. To give you an idea, I told you about the story about riding the MotoGP bike at Valencia.
Yeah.
Earlier. Well, I was with a couple of other guys and a couple of other journalists, and I'm a decent rider. I'm definitely not slow. These guys are really very quick. One of them in particular, who shall remain nameless, but he's very quick. He was out there. I'm watching him going around. He's looking really good. So we felt confident enough to ask Honda for our lap times. It turned out that was a mistake. it turned out that we were actually going 9 seconds a lap slower than the Moto 3 guys.
Wow. Okay.
We were 9 seconds a lap slower than Moto 3.
That's insane.
They could have pulled him for a cup of tea.
Definitely a bit of a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Dang it, I guess I'm not as fast as There was me thinking that I'm, emulating the heroes.
Right.
So do I get starstruck? Absolutely. I actually have a slightly embarrassing story to tell you about this track day.
Okay.
Because I was helping sort of organize it. Carrie at the front desk at Button Willow calls me up in the morning, and she says, Arthur, there's a guy at the front desk here who wants to come in. And we'd left instructions that, because there were several, Hollywood guys there and what have you, that really nobody that wasn't on the list couldn't come in.
Sure.
She says, Arthur, I need you to come to the front desk. I'm all right. So I jump on the scooter, and Teejay and I both go there. And so I walk into Carrie, and she said, oh, it's, that guy over there. And there's a little older man sitting down there in this beaten up racing suit, car driving suit.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I'm like, who the heck is this? So he stands up and he sticks out his hand and goes, Ed Van Halen. and I grew up in England, so of course I know who Van Halen are, and I'm familiar with Running with the Devil and Ice Cream Man and what have you.
No idea what he looked like.
No idea what he looks like.
Sure, yeah.
So I'm thinking to myself, is this Eddie Van Halen, one of the greatest guitar players of all time? Or is this Ed Van Halen, who lives in a trailer in Maricopa and, is trying to sneak his way into our track day? Then I noticed sort of out the back on a flatbed was a very expensive looking Porsche.
Okay.
That was clearly been in a bit of a fender bender. And I'm thinking, I bet that's his. I said, I was like...
he said, look, I've got friends in here. They said, just drop by.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm sorry, man, it's closed track day, and we're not really supposed to... He goes, man, I've got friends in here. I know people. I'm like, okay, all right, okay. So I let him in. Turns out it was Eddie Van Halen.
Wow, okay.
So I went up to him afterwards. I'm like, Eddie, I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize you, man. I'm so sorry. It turned out that he'd crashed his car on the way to the track day and had called a flatbed and said, come pick me up, but take me to the track.
Right.
So he was hoping to put in a few laps in his Porsche when the bikes weren't on the track. But so then about an hour later, my phone goes again, and it's Carrie at the front desk, and she goes, Arthur, I've got Alex Van Halen here. I'm like, let him in.
Yeah, seriously. I think it's that Alex Van Halen. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Right. I think we could get
Came to take his brother home.
Came to take Eddie home. So,
jeez.
Yeah. So anyway. So do we get starstruck? Absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
And I have to say, Keanu. I mean, I've spent quite a lot of time with Keanu and riding with him. He is just. All the rumors you hear about him are absolutely true.
Wow.
He is the nicest guy. He is the nicest, kindest man you can imagine.
Wow. That's cool to hear. And I bet he's pretty fast too.
He is. He's a very good rider. Very, very good rider. He's very focused. He really, he's a machine. I mean, he's very physically fit, obviously. So he'll go out and just do lap after lap after lap. And he'll come in and then ask questions and, what about this and what about that? And I'll say, well, here's a line, or this is kind of what I'd say. Not that I'm any expert, but he always listened to it. He never sort of, he just doesn't. This is an A-list guy, and he could look at me and go, "Who the heck are you?" But he does not. He's the nicest guy.
A gentleman. Arthur we went to pick him up in Arthur's truck, and I went to get in the back. You guys sit in the front. He's like, "Oh no, you're Arthur's lady." You sit up front.
Nice. Well, that's cool. That's cool to hear, though. That's really cool to hear.
Yeah. So they're good people. Good people.
Well, let's talk about Motos and Friends real quick. How did that get started, and what do you guys talk about?
Well, lots of people had been saying to us, you should have a podcast. We listen to podcasts a lot because we travel around the States a lot to different events. And, we're in our truck listening to a variety of podcasts. So we thought, okay, we'll give it a go. I mean, we have people out, editors riding bikes all the time. And so decided to do a verbal review about whatever had been happening, ultimate motorcycling, and then have a guest. We tried it different way rounds, and we tried it with just a guest, but we hit on this formula which works really well. And the first episode we put out, actually Arthur put a player on Ultimate Motorcycling website, and it just went great guns. We were thinking, pressure from friends will do this. I put the first episode on, and it got a huge amount of downloads.
Got over 40,000 downloads.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
And I was like, oh, no, I guess we're going to have to start a podcast.
This is the thing now. Yeah.
So it's been great.
Are you both jump on? I know, TJ, you co-host here quite a bit. So
yes, I do a lot of the guests, and I do the producing. I find the guests in the main I like to sort of meet people live, as it were. So as I say, we drive around and we go to these different events. We take our motorcycles in the back. We have a toy hauler, so we take our road bikes with us and ride with people, get introduced to other motorcycle guys. We went to near Atlanta and met up with Moto Shelby, and she's a fantastic chick. Rode with her. She became our guest. Like I say, Freddie Spencer, we met
Joe Beccaro?
Joe Beccaro. Oh, he's gorgeous. Yeah, we met him at the Rock Store. He's a stunt rider. He doubles for Jason Momoa and Gerard Butler.
Oh, wow.
Jerry, as he calls it. Yeah, he is
he's a trip, yeah.
A great rider. I was going to say
cool.
Nutter. I don't know if I want to label him as that. And he'll ride anything, do any type of stunt. He's unbelievable. No, I was thinking of Evel Knievel's brother.
Oh, yeah, Kelly. Yeah, Kelly Knievel.
Okay.
And so we meet up with all sorts of interesting people because, they see the rig and we've got stickers on it, and we get our motorbikes out, and people, what motorcycle guys are like. Everyone just starts talking about motorcycles.
Sure. It's how we met you. I mean, it's so funny because, friends always say, oh, how did you meet them? And I always go, motorcycles.
Yeah, right.
The thing about motorcycling, it's just the community. I'm sure you found this. Just the community. Everybody is so friendly, and I don't know, there's just something about motorcycles and motorcycling.
You said you guys said it, so I'm not going to think you're going to get offended, but you've been around motorcycles a long time, a couple years more than me.
We're old giffers.
Yeah.
How is the motorcycle kind of world, not necessarily even the industry, but just the world and the sport of riding changed, since you started riding back in the 70s?
Well, it's changed with us. You don't absolutely notice it, but when I look back, I guess it was more we were more blasé, but the bikes didn't have ABS and that sort of thing. And I mean, I was lucky. I was there in the era of the modern Suzukis and Yamahas and Kawasaki's, but we rode with some friends on older bikes, and they were always breaking down and just less. Everything now is more consistent. You can just go and get your bike out, and it's going to be just fine. You don't have to do a lot to it. I think it's. I want to use the word safer again without using the word safer. To me, it seems safer, but also the gear. I mean, there's lightweight clothing now. There's no excuse not to wear protective stuff. The range is immense for boys and girls, male and female. So. The helmet's fantastic. Mayorai Tsubasa is just gorgeous. I've just got that and I love it. You can really just, we're sport bike riders essentially. So we like all the bright, colourful gear, the helmets and the leathers and, all that sort of thing. But, you can be sort of a cruiser person in your tasseled leathers and you get the tall boots with the white socks. There's so many things that you can make and create and be in the motorcycle world these days.
Teejay rides an MV Agusta 800 Brutale.
Oh, wow. Okay. Real casual.
So,
very pretty.
So it's pretty girl on a pretty bike. And it's it's awesome.
That's cool.
They don't know I'm an old deer till I take my helmet off.
And I ride a Yamaha XSR 900. That's the sort of the retro-inspired version of the MT-09.
That is absolutely a lovely ride.
Fabulous.
I have one in my garage.
Really?
Yes, I do.
Same thing?
A 2019. Yep.
Really? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
what a lovely ride.
It's a gas. That thing rips. That's my first modern motorcycle. I have an old 79 Honda CM 400 and an 86 FJ 1200. So
lovely.
I've had, those bikes both for a really long time. I bought the 19 a couple of years ago, the XSR, and that thing just going from, literally carbureted, no ABS, all that stuff to all that traction control. It was a little bit of an adjustment, but that thing is so much fun to ride. It's like not even riding at all.
Yeah, that's it. I like bikes that are easy to ride.
Mm-hmm.
If it's easy to ride, then you can focus on what's going on the street.
Yeah,
and of course, California is motorcycle nirvana.
Right?
It really is. Up in the mountains, and there's no cops and not much traffic, and the roads are clean and good. It's absolutely fantastic. The riding around here, I've loved it for 30 years.
And I have to bring the weather up again because that's an English thing. And back to my roots. So the weather here is fantastic. In Brisbane, in Australia, it's tropical. You're always getting hot and sweaty and it drains you and that sort of thing. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention, you said about differences now to back then, is in England and in Australia, you can just lane split without thinking about it. And of course, you can in California. But in other states here, and we ride all over, you can't lane split. And it's
very weird, yeah. It's very weird for us. That is something that's changed. When you ask about, has motorcycling changed? Fundamentally, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, getting onto two wheels gives you an experience like nothing else. It really does. I've owned convertible cars over the years. Even that is nothing like, riding a motorcycle. Somehow you're just much more in touch with the environment and the smells, the feeling, the spring blossoms. You name it. And leaning a motorcycle is what always sort of drew me to it. There's something about, leaning. And I don't want to make your Florida listeners or your Chicago listeners, sort of green with envy because they don't have a lot of corners there. But it's still great experiences. I think anybody who's ever ridden a two-wheeler can relate to what I'm saying.
It's that full body experience. It's like skiing, isn't it? You're part of the machine, and that's
part of the environment.
That's that whole feel.
It really is.
And even on three wheels, some people who might be incapacitated or not confident enough for two wheels, you get that, as you say, the fragrances of the blossoms, and you really are in the elements.
Teejay did the Can-Am Spider launch a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Or last year, I think. And they rode around local roads in Southern California, and actually she liked the bike.
I loved it. And such a, friendly community. It's just awesome. And I just love to see everybody there. Again, you get the same feel. Everybody's in all the gear and they're all just going point to point and stopping for nice lunches. And it was fabulous.
Yeah. But the motorcycle community really hasn't changed at all. It's been the same for 50 years that I've been riding. It's been just absolutely... Just motorcycle people are just the best. They really are.
Yes, I think it just depends on where your life journey takes you. I've gone from learning to ride as a necessity. It was then my mode of transport, and then became throughout my life a hobby, high days and holidays. And now it's my way of life. It's my love life. It's my whole life. It's the lead.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's kind of been the through line for your entire life. But from your personal life to love life to sport life. It's been all encompassing. It sounds like
it really has.
Well, last question. Speaking of motorcycle trips, do you guys each or together or separate have a favorite motorcycle trip that you kind of always think about, or that lives in your mind, very fondly?
From the past, well, for me, the Tuscany ride that was heavenly, I have to say, with George and Motor California. But I guess standout rides are snippets of the rides that Arthur and I used to do together in Europe. But my first ride where I went on my own down to around Europe, in hindsight, a bit stupid for a teenage girl to be doing that. But I had some life-changing experiences. Put my tent up the first night and then practically set fire to it. I'd pulled up onto the side of the road because I was too nervous about finding campgrounds and speaking French and dealing with the money, as you had to do back in those days. So I just pulled up on the side of the road. And when I got out of the tent in the morning, I had literally pitched on the edge of a sheer drop. If I'd ridden another 2 foot when I pulled off, I'd have been over there.
Yikes.
Another time I was looking for these are just little stories. I mean, so much happened. I was looking for a gîte, and they're sort of places you can stay over, but not always official. Somebody might have a bar or a house and have a little room you can stay in. So you're looking for a little cardboard sign. It's cheap and cheerful. You can stay over. I went through these grand gates with wrought iron gates to this bar, and I was trying to ask the lady in my French if I could stay, and she was no. And then I was nearly in tears, and she was like, "Okay, oui." So she gave me a room, and off I went up there. I had a great night's sleep because of the previous experiences of fire and falling off the edge of a cliff. So
yeah, seriously.
I could relax. I said my au revoirs and went out to my bike in the morning. I was like, blimey, where's my helmet? I was looking everywhere. I'd got everything else. And I thought, I must have left it. Went back to the room, not there, came out again. Looking around, I thought, well, I'll just go in and I don't know what to do. I can't ride without it. It's the law, and I wouldn't ride without a helmet ever. I was just walking back through these great big gates. There were pillars either side, and I had put it on top of one of those pillars, and it had been there overnight. I was so relieved to see it, but I picked it up. I thought, what a fool. And it was wet from the dew. And
right, yeah.
So that was another stupid thing. Nearly lost my helmet. So that ride kind of stands out, and it was pivotal. It was a life kind of one of those points in life where things were happening for me,
Yeah.
Those teenage years.
I love it.
Well, the one ride that, again, so many of us, so long, but one that particularly sort of stands out for me, I think, was me and my friends, my local friends here from Los Angeles. We went on a ride. This was, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. We went on a ride up the coast to Northern California and stayed in a couple of hotels and rode around the redwoods and the Avenue of the Giants and all that. Fantastic ride. And my friends are fast guys, fast guys. In the right, we're not crazy. We don't ride crazy through towns but when we're on twisty empty canyon roads, these guys are quick.
Yeah.
And so we came back down. We were planning to ride down Big Sur, which is one of the quintessential. I mean, Highway 1 down that twisty road along the coast. From Carmel, down to Morro Bay, is one of the quintessential sort of roads, maybe in the world. So we leave Carmel and we come down. There's a big tailback of traffic. So we weave our way, along the outside, as you're allowed to do in California. We get to the front of the line. And there's a Caltrans guy there, with a set of traffic lights, and he's standing there. So he said, "You might as well take your helmets off. It's going to be a long wait." So we get chatting to him, and he says, "Well, yeah, we're doing a whole roadwork thing." He said it's going to be at least a 20-minute wait.
Okay.
So we're chatting away, and he says, we're talking about cops on the road. He says, "Well, actually," he said, "there's only one cop, on this stretch of road." We're like, "Really?" And we said, "Well, that's interesting because we passed him. He's in the traffic behind us." So you can imagine that. So it suddenly occurred to us that, well, wait a minute. When these lights go green, there's going to be about 20 minutes of completely empty road with zero traffic and no cops because the only cop is behind us in the traffic.
That's a golden opportunity. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm not proud of it, and I probably shouldn't be saying this in public, but when the lights went green, it was like a MotoGP start. And it was definitely one of the most memorable rides I've ever had.
Oh, man.
It was absolutely spectacular.
You let your hair down.
We let our hair down.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got a wild hair.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's like all the stars aligning to just
all the stars aligned. Yeah. We reached Hearst Castle and we hadn't seen anyone else. We were like, this is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, well, thank you guys very much for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it. I want you to plug Ultimate Motorcycling and Motos and Friends. How can we find you?
Well, ultimatemotorcycling.com, and we have Instagram, X, MeWe, Facebook, any of those venues. You can go to the App Store, Android or Apple, and find Ultimate Moto app and get a great read every month.
And then Motos and Friends too. Don't want to forget about that.
Yes, if people want to hear us waffling on. Motos and Friends, anywhere you normally listen to your podcasts. And again, Apple, Spotify, or go to ultimatemotorcycling.com and you'll find the player on the bottom of every page on the website.
Perfect. Well, Arthur and TJ, thank you guys so much for sharing your stories. I know it's probably about 1% of them, so we might have to have you on again, or like I said, come out to California and have a couple of rides and swap some stories there.
Please do. We'd love to have you. It'd be great. It'd be great fun. We'll show you a great time.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys. We'll talk soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, cheerio.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Driven to Ride. Interact with us and check out full unedited conversations, photos, interviews, video interviews, plus other goodies on YouTube or Instagram at Driven to Ride Podcast. Or you can check us out at driventoridepodcast.com. And make sure you leave us a rating and review from wherever you get your podcasts too. If you have an idea for an episode or a guest, or you want to invite us out on an adventure, email us hello@driventoridepodcast.com. Driven to Ride is wholly owned by Flint Rock LLC, made possible with help from Matthew Miles, and written, hosted, and produced by me, Mark Long. We'll see you out there.